Hello and welcome back to The Discerning Otaku. This time I'm going to try something a little bit different. As you can see, my face. Um, and I'm trying this a little bit differently just to try and get myself on camera. It wasn't something I'm particularly comfortable with, but I figured I'd have to give it a try eventually. So I decided to do this on a little bit different segment. This time around, I'm going to be reviewing an audiobook that I checked out recently, as I found out that there are certain light novels that have audiobook variations of them. And since I started my new job, I tend to work about 10 hours a day, and that gives me some time to check out some audio media, which I didn't have time to do before. So this time around, I checked out Reincarnated as the Last of My Kind. Obviously, from the title of the light novel, you can kind of get an idea of what it's about. It is an isekai story about a girl who is reincarnated into a fantasy world after a bicycle incident. She does retain a good chunk of her memories, so she isn't starting entirely from scratch, which is a fairly common isekai trope. Um, Now, as far as the audio portions of this, I don't really have any issues with them. There were some certain weird things that might have just been bothering me personally, such as listing off certain vegetation that had variations in this world, like potates instead of potatoes, and the narrator of the story gave them very odd enunciations. Now, that might just be a me problem, might have absolutely nothing to do with your enjoyment of it. The other thing that I found very strange was the laughing. Whenever the narrator read out laughs, it came out a little strange. Once again, might be a me problem. But as far as anything else goes, there's a male and a female narrator. The female narrator is for the main protagonist, Tina, and the male narrator is her adoptive father. So the main premise of the story is the girl is in a bicycle accident. She dies and is reincarnated. Comes back as a baby, awakens, sees her parents, and then is immediately put into what she refers to as an arc. And then she is set down a river. She doesn't understand until much, much later what was actually happening. I believe that's the end of book 2 or beginning of book 3, where she actually realizes what was going on. She is at that point found by bandits. Those bandits are pretty quickly killed by monsters, and she is saved by what she later comes to find out is a mythical creature. From that point on, the narration is taken over by the father, where he describes where this mythical creature, or mythical as he refers to it as, leads him to a baby. And he, at that point, adopts the baby as he was recently retired from the military when he lost his arm in battle. From that point on, it time jumps until she's a little bit older, and she is working with her father at the inn that he owns. Um, and from that point, we do tend to fall into some fantasy tropes. Nothing out of the ordinary or unusual. But it is learned fairly quickly that she is a talented alchemist at a very young age. And that's where really the story tends to go very hard into the fantasy and outside of just a standard slice of life story. Uh, from there, it does time jump pretty regularly to different age groups. I believe it goes to 8, 10, 12, 14. It jumps around pretty quickly, where it basically you can assume nothing interesting happened. It alludes to certain activities or certain things in previous chapters as it goes along, and it does try and keep the story going at a fairly decent pace. I had no issues with the pace of said story. However, that does lead me to the issues that I did have with said story, was the incredibly timid nature of the main protagonist. There'd be certain instances where she would overthink certain situations where if this were a real life scenario, all of those scenarios could have played out 1,000 times over in the time it took her to make said decisions. And to me, over narration does tend to be a bit annoying. It could be because I listened to the entire book in one long stretch, so once again, that might be a me issue, or it could just honestly be an over narration issue with the material itself. But I would have preferred a strong, independent female character instead of an overly timid character. And the overly timid character, unfortunately, is what you were left with. And it does tend to be incredibly obnoxious. There is at one point in the story where her father tells her to use magic to help save herself, and within the circumstance that she's in, she can use it. Worst case scenario, it fails and she dies, or she cannot use it and then she dies. But she goes back and forth on, I don't know if it'll work, I don't know what this will do. And it's one of those, like, for me, almost a common sense thing where if the worst case scenario is going to you die, worst case scenario, you might as well try. And now the main other point I was thinking, well, maybe it's because she's 12 years old, but that's only physically. Mentally, she's near 40. She still retains a lot of that mental fortitude from her past life. She understood her age, she remembered her past job, she remembered a lot of stuff from her original world. So it's one of those things where, yes, this whole world is new, but you've had over a decade to kind of acclimate yourself to it. Plus, you have all of the experiences from your previous life to kind of help, get yourself a little bit more used to dealing with things happening. Now, I don't know if that's just a characterization that was meant to be there, but for me personally, it was very grating to constantly have this character that you want to root for, but she won't even root for herself a lot of the time. And for me, another thing that kind of shocked me was in a modern society like the one we're in now, where there are so much fantasy media, and she herself even mentions fantasy video games, fantasy anime in the real world, she is constantly shocked about how certain things work. But those things were things that she should, at least from a common sense standpoint, understand. If I get isekai, if Truck-kun comes and gets me and I go, I'm going to, at least on base level, understand the concept of magic, understand the concept of alchemy, just based on the media that I've ingested through this life. And like I said, she makes a lot of mentions of it and remembering it from her previous life, but at the same time is shocked to the point of not understanding that it even exists. So for me, as far as the story goes, I kind of, every time I finish a book, I'm currently in book 3 every time, and I have to rate them because I follow up all my stuff on Goodreads to keep up with everything, all the media I've been going through. I keep giving it 2 out of 5. I feel it's fairly generous based on how I'm feeling about the media itself. The narration is perfectly serviceable. I don't really have any issues with that. It's real people. It's not an AI robot droning, so that's perfectly fine. It's not a full dramatization. There's not music or anything like that. It's literally just the book. So as far as the audio goes, completely serviceable. As far as the pacing of the story, no issues with the pacing. I feel it's paced fairly well. It's interesting enough. There's no issues. The world building is done quite well. I've enjoyed the alchemy system, the magic system, the characters they set up. No real issues with them. Like I said, my biggest issue is the over narration of the main character and the timid nature of the main character. Those things are just extremely hard to read for me. Like I said, I wish she was a little bit more rooting for herself and a little bit stronger of a character, and it would be, I'd rate it probably a bit higher than that. But as it stands, unless something were to change with how the character herself is, I'll probably finish it just due to lack of a lot of audio light novels. So I will probably finish the ones that I have, but I don't foresee it gaining much more unless she changes as a character. But if you want to check it out, the audiobooks are available on Audible. The light novels, I assume, are probably accessible through Amazon or wherever you tend to get your light novels. But once again, that was Reincarnated as the last of my kind. Now, I don't know what you think of this format. It's something that I'm trying out. I want to see how it goes. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. If you are so inclined, please like and subscribe. I'm not monetized or anything like that. That is a far-fetched dream, but who knows? Maybe someday. I've just been doing this because I really do enjoy trying to spread the media that I enjoy around. Even if it's something I don't super enjoy, I do like to give my opinion on it just to see what other people think about it as well. Maybe start a conversation with me. But I think that's going to be all for today. So, as per always, I'm the Discerning Otaku. I hope you have a wonderful day. Read more manga. Watch more anime. Bye-bye.